Hey guys, it's EDDBUD. Thanks for tuning in once again. I'm back today with an in-depth comparison between the Fuelcell TC, the Vaporfly Next Percent, and the Alphafly Next Percent. Many a comparison to get through this week, guys. We've got another shoe released towards the end of the week, the Asics Meta Racer, which I will be on the mouse ready to get when it becomes available. Later in the week I will have a comparison between the Alphafly and the Endorphin Pro. It's going to be some faster miles this week. I'm going to be burning some dust. Those people out walking their dogs are just going to see this flash go past them, and it's going to be a very nerdy shoe man running as fast as he can. So nearing 100 miles in the Fuelcell TC, and I'm getting loads of questions in regards to this shoe and comparisons that you can draw between it and the Next Percent and the Alphafly. So I thought let's pair them up with some in-depth analysis. Just to let you know, all of these shoes I've bought with my own money. There's no freebies, no sponsorship. These are my own honest, very strange at times, opinions. First up though, a few shoe specifications for you. You can see there's some quite drastic differences between these shoes in the same size. Availability of these is somewhat limited now by the looks of it. I did see there's a red version of the Fuelcell TC that has been recently released. It's very bright actually. That one's going to certainly make you stand out running around on your own. When we do get to the start line though, you'll really stand out. They'll get you noticed. Some sources suggest that there's an early July release for the Alphafly around the rest of the world. Does seem like an afterthought for Nike really. They're just like, yeah, I'll just put a few out here and a few out there. I bet Saucony have got their shoe factories working at 200% to make hay while the sun shines. You can almost imagine this phone call like, oh no, they're going to release the Alphafly in July. Quick, raise up the production. 200%. Let's go. Just looking at some of the stats here, obviously the TC and the Next Percent have got a very similar drop, around about 8mm. But when you actually look at the forefoot width, there's actually quite a difference. The TC and the Alpha are certainly closer. There's a wider surface area, certainly. There's actually quite a considerable difference between the rear width of the shoes. The Alphafly is by far the wider at the back of the foot. No comparison in terms of weight really. The Next Percent is vastly lighter. My size 11.5 weighs in at 236 grams compared to the 309 grams of the Fuelcell TC. Length though is quite different. In terms of length, the Alphafly and the Fuelcell TC actually have the same length, although they're different sizes. My Alphafly is a size 11 and the TC is a size 11.5, and they both measure about 29.5 centimeters in length. The Next Percent only measures 29. So I'd suggest the Alphafly is very slightly longer. So let's start this comparison with the upper. In terms of upper, the TC I think has more in comparison with the Alphafly than it does the Next Percent. It's just a bit more rigidity to the upper, certainly with the suede and the heel counter. It's just a little bit more solid. The only part of the Alphafly upper really with any significant flexibility is the tongue, which is almost like a elasticated feel to it. In the rear here and the heel, it's actually really solid. There's not a lot of movement there whatsoever, but it doesn't give at all. All three shoes have got this almost suede like felt type material, leading away from the heel towards the first eyelets. The Alphafly and the Next Percent have got this kind of padded heel. They'll notice on the Alphafly that it's much shorter and the padding isn't anywhere near as deep. In terms of sweat and moisture though, the TC upper is certainly the most absorbent of all three. I think it's due to that mesh material. It does seem to hang on to moisture a little bit more than the others. That Next Percent upper is certainly the lightest of the three, closely followed by the Atom Knit of the Alphafly. I find this one the most breathable of all three shoes in this comparison today. I mean, you practically can see right through it. You can actually see my torch shining through the upper. It's that breathable. When I did my time trial recently in this over the half marathon distance, I found it really excelled in the warmer temperatures that we've got here in the UK at the moment. I think it's probably got the best lockdown for me as well, or at least the most easily achieved lockdown. There's no real thought, you just put it on, make sure the shoe is cinched up nicely and away you go. I think it's close between the Next Percent and the Fuelcell TC in terms of lockdown, although I did have to mess about a little bit with the lacing on this shoe You have to make sure the tongue's in the right place on this one before you even start cinching the laces down. So in terms of upper, I think I'll give the crown to the Alphafly. On to midsoles now. It's very interesting that the quoted stack heights on some of the manufacturers' websites are vastly different when you actually get the shoes in hand in higher sizes. They typically list an 8.5 as the stack height measurement size, but when you get up to an 11 or an 11.5, they're vastly different. Going between my Next Percent in a size 11 and a size 11.5, the widths are exactly the same in both the forefoot and at the rear, and you get about a 5mm difference in terms of length. Almost all of that seems to be in the midsole and outsole as well. There's very little difference in the upper on those two shoes. It's minimal. So there's about 0.5 of a centimetre greater surface area in the Alphafly compared to the Next Percent. It's really quite noticeable actually when you look at it and place it on foot. I've always found that this shoe is vastly superior in terms of stability. Some people have said, no it's not, it's too high. I'm not even sure some of those people have even worn the shoe, to be honest with you. In the back of the shoe, there's an even greater difference. The Next Percent's actually 1.6 centimetres narrower than the Alphafly. But actually measuring that underfoot surface area, so as you slide your foot into the shoe, they're very similar. There's about 10 centimetres width in the forefoot, and then I noticed similar measurements at the back for both shoes. The Fuelcell TC actually works out quite a bit wider in terms of the actual area that your foot contacts with inside the shoe. It's kind of pretty much what I expected really. This shoe does feel a little bit wider. Definitely more accommodating perhaps for those who have a wider foot. In the Next Percent and the TC, there's certainly some forefoot creasing going on. Obviously the forefoot midfoot section takes the brunt of the heel strike, but I think the implementation of those forefoot air units in the Alphafly is clearly to circumvent the Zoom X foam from bottoming out after constant squishing. Over time or miles within a race or a run, perhaps data suggests to Nike that the thinnest section of the Zoom X midsole foam here starts to bottom out and become less effective, or at least less effective than one of the Air Zoom units. There's some textured pieces here in the midsole of the Next Percent, and something similar on the TC that's perhaps there to hide some of the midfoot creasing that occurs. Some people seem to get mega upset and really irritated by that. It's a shoe! Though I'd suggest that the Fuelcell material is actually the worst for that. It is creasing up quite badly here after 100 miles. It's not to say that the shoe doesn't feel good anymore. In fact, it felt great yesterday. I don't know if it's whether I've spent loads of time wandering around in my LeBron 17s recently that have got those air units in the forefoot, but in terms of midsole, I think I'm preferring the Alphafly on those longer runs than either of the other two shoes. I think for my midfoot strike, the increased surface area in both the forefoot and the rear of the shoe is really welcome. And I think the lower drop's perhaps preferable to me also. So I'm going to give the crown on midsole to the Alphafly. Now I wasn't sure about it at the start, but it's certainly grown on me. Outsole now. One big difference between the outsoles here is the rubber section on the TC comes around towards the back of the shoe. It's actually quite considerable. It's much thicker as well than the rubber on either of the other two shoes in today's comparison. I found it close to 100 miles. There's almost no wear whatsoever on the outsole of the TC. At least the rubber section. There's some considerable battle damage. A bit lower down, several thorns and small rocks do get embedded into the exposed foam. The Next Percent here with 100 miles on is holding up pretty well. Certainly some wear there, you can tell it's been used. It's certainly got a bit of mojo. Doesn't smell too bad either. The Alphafly though, with only 50 miles of use, does show some Slayer-like shredding on the rubber. Those traction fins are already starting to disintegrate. I mean, there's a lot of rubber there. They're not gone by any means, but when I consider what's left of the rubber on the Next Percent compared to this now, halfway, I guess it might shock some people. That's all I'm going to say. So weirdly, I do like the deeper fins on the Alphafly on dirt road areas and light woodland trail surfaces. I've run on a variety of things in this and feels pretty good. I didn't find the Next Percent as good on those type of surfaces. As I said, the outsole of the TC is a thorn and twig magnet. The rubber sections on the Alphafly just seem impervious to such forest faunia dangers. You can see that Top Cat Kip was involved in cooking up this Speed King. His favourite surfaces are no problem, alongside road and concrete. He is a master shoe scientist, and for that I salute you. Outsole durability though does matter, and for that the Next Percent is still the king for me. The TC and the Alphafly in second place. On to value now. So we got an £80 difference between the Alphafly and the TC. Is it worth another £20 between the Next Percent and the Alphafly? The man from Del Monte, he say yes. So you should buy the TC for training and the Alphafly for racing, right? Well, you know, it's never quite that simple, is it? Somebody with a wider foot might benefit from the additional width and slight stability nods offered in the Fuelcell TC. I would certainly avoid the Alphafly and the Next Percent if your foot isn't narrow. In terms of sizing, the Alphafly does run longer than normal. This size 11 here is about 5 centimeters longer than I would normally expect to see. The Next Percent in the same size was 5 centimeters shorter. Something to bear in mind. I'd suggest if you are using the TC, if you want to reduce the weight a little bit, take out the stock insole and put in one of those paper thin Hoka ones. Save yourself 8 grams. It becomes a little bit more of a manageable shoe. The Alphafly is 50 grams lighter than the Fuelcell TC. Go figure. The Next Percent is 70 grams lighter than the Fuelcell TC. I don't see anybody racing in the TC anytime soon. Certainly not in the larger sizes anyway. Can you train in the Next Percent and the Alphafly? I don't see why not, but I think you're going to burn through the rubber in the forefoot area of the Alphafly pretty quickly. I think for me the Next Percent is probably the value king here. I did some extensive research, getting lots of viewer opinions about the durability of the shoe, how well it holds up over time, and I do think that this probably is slightly better value than the Alphafly right now. If you can find one, that is. I think the better durability here means you can take it out of the box and use it a lot more. People are going to get a little bit more value out of it if they feel that they could use it on a daily basis. Some people say don't use carbon plate shoes on a daily basis. Well, I can kind of understand where they're coming from. I got so many shoes, I need to keep switching them up anyway. Hope you've enjoyed this in-depth analysis of the Alphafly, the Vaporfly Next Percent, and the Fuelcell TC. You got any questions about today's video, or any comments, any opinions that you want to voice, please put them down below. A film interlude today. I found it. I'd lost this DVD for a long time. I've managed to find it again. Rock and Roll High School, starring the Ramones. The original band lineup are here in this ridiculous story. It's all very strange, kind of student oppression. Some fantastic comparisons are made between the loudness of the Ramones' live performances and Pat Boone. Really is worth watching if you've got some time to kill. Rock and Roll High School, the feature film by the Ramones. Hope you've enjoyed the video today, guys. I thoroughly enjoyed making it. I do appreciate all the subscribers out there. We're really moving up to the topmost of the poppermost. If you're feeling like you want to, hit that subscribe button and click the bell for notifications below of when new videos are launched. It really does help the channel out massively if you give this video a thumbs up like. Share it with your running buddies. My name's EDDBUD, and I'll be seeing you